Danganronpa 2, at least in my experience, is known for having the most lovable characters from the whole series. Many people would say that this is their favourite from the trilogy, and many of them would say the characters are the main reason why. Most of the characters in this game are beyond fun and beyond creative, but it's clear that some just have more depth and development than others. And even though I do absolutely love the majority of these characters, I will still rate them, because I can, and because it gives me an excuse to talk about these characters in as much depth as I see fit. So prepare yourself for a lengthy video. You might want to grab a snack, or a cup of tea, or a blanket. It's fine, I'll wait. Waiting's over, let's get going.
Hi, welcome to Chili's.
This should surprise no one. No one should be surprised. This guy is a dick and deserves to be last on the list.
Oh, you again!
Teru is a small-town cook who despises his humble roots, wanting to be known as a big city chef. He demands you call him chef, puts on a fake accent, and lies about where he's from. But he is also an open pervert and sexual fucking predator. Yes, I know he's meant to be high school age. Yes, I know they're all high school age. But what do you expect me to think of him apart from sexual predator, when the first time we see him properly, he's trying to trick Sonia, who he knows is sheltered and foreign, into giving him a blowjob. And he doesn't even flinch when you see him and stop his plan. You know, most people, if caught in a situation like that, would try to, explain themselves. They'd tell you it wasn't what it looked like, and so on. But this dude is just completely chill about it. He tells you he thinks Sonia has a good chance of putting out, and that he thinks Peko is a bit of a freak and wears a black thong. Like, dude! Ultimate cook? More like ultimate fucking horn dog. But not only is this dude really fucking disgusting, but he's also the first killer. Now, it's the first trial when his character starts trying to play with your emotions. Trying being the key word there. It gets revealed that he ended up killing Byakuya by accident. In reality, he had heard about Nagito's plan to kill someone, and thought that he would kill Nagito to save whoever he was trying to kill. He tries to use this fact to convince you that he's actually not a bad person. But the fact is that he took advantage of the situation so he could escape. If he really wanted to save a life, at the start of the party he could have said, hi, Nagito's trying to kill someone. He's gonna cause a blackout, and he hid a knife under the table. If he had done that, there would be no casualties at all. But no, he chose the route that would allow him to escape, without weighing on his conscience too much. And it still stands that at that point he chose to attempt murder. He knew that everyone else would have to die for him to escape. So, I'm sorry mate, but I have absolutely zero sympathy. There's also his weird and annoying accent change that I spoke about in my video on the first case, and this is just one of the many things that make him completely insufferable in the trial. The only positive things I can think about of Teru are as follows. I did like the last little cutscene with his mum. I still hate him, but I can see that he really cared for his mum, and the emotion he showed at the end of the trial seemed really genuine and painful. I also liked that his motive was one of the most straightforward in the series so far. People normally have a really complex and strange motive, most of them prompted by Monokuma. But Teru just wanted to go home, and I thought it was a nice motive, especially for the first case.
Playing me, I'm like 9 years old. I'm 11, so shut the fuck up.
Okay, let's just get this out of the way here. This cast as a whole is great, and 14 out of 16 of them I love with my whole heart. This is the only character besides Teru that I hate in this game. And god do I hate her.
People who call other people liars are usually liars themselves. If you say I'm lying, prove it. Can you even prove that I'm lying?
Hiyoko is absolutely horrid, and I hope I never encounter someone like her in my life. This little menace lives for the sole purpose of being vile and nasty to everyone around her, and I was honestly happy when she got killed by the person she verbally abused the most. Now, I get what the creators were going for with this character. She is small and cute and childlike on the outside, but on the inside she's mean and antagonistic. However, my problem is not with the creator's intentions. The description appears small and cute and childlike but is actually a dick also applies to Fuyuhiko, and he's great. Something I found interesting is that originally Hiyoko was intended to have a similar arc to Fuyuhiko, and maybe end up being a survivor, with Fuyuhiko dying when Hiyoko actually did. But I think they made the right choice to change this. To me, Hiyoko's character wasn't as well executed as Fuyuhiko's. Her whole arc felt kind of flat, and I didn't find it compelling at all. So let's talk about what I find so bad about her. Hiyoko's character, in my eyes, can be boiled down to bratty child. Discarding her looks completely, Hiyoko feels like she is much younger than the rest of the cast. She is mean and abrasive to everyone, but is at her roots a typical bully who primarily picks on people that she knows she can hurt. Most obviously Mikan, but also Kazuichi and Fuyuhiko. She obviously gets some sort of enjoyment out of insulting people and getting some sort of reaction. So at the start of the game, she pretty much picks on everyone, but finds that it's useless to pick on someone like Ibuki, who is constantly happy and couldn't give a shit, Sonia, who probably wouldn't understand anyway, or Teru who'd probably just get off on it. While most of her insults like trashy skank, pig shit, or I hope you get a hangnail and die, are pretty surface level and childish, she does seem to know how to get under people's skin, like when she verbalizes Kazuichi's fear that Sonia would never love a loser like him, or blames Fuyuhiko when he's obviously still grieving and burdened with guilt. I know that all of this just makes her a well-characterized antagonistic character, but what gets to me the most about her is how annoying she is. Sometimes she just starts fake crying out of nowhere. She is incompetent in the trials, she whines constantly, and just generally always puts a downer on the group. What some would consider Hiyoko's positive development stems from her relationship with Mahiro. She becomes friends with Mahiro during the second chapter, seems upset by her death, and makes a memorial for her. And while this is all well and good, we love friendship and all that, to me it just seems very selfish. Mahiro is good enough to help her tie her kimono when people start complaining that she stinks because she hasn't showered, because she is incompetent to such a degree that she can't even put on her own clothes. And because of this, Hiyoko labels Mahiro as someone kind and useful. While her little memorial seemed to come from the heart, I could never shake the feeling that Hiyoko, at least at the start, only befriended Mahiro for selfish reasons. And it's clear that it wasn't a mutual friendship. Mahiro seems a bit reluctant to hang out with Hiyoko and gets embarrassed when Hiyoko speaks highly of her and their friendship. Some people also defend Hiyoko with the fact that she was bullied as a child, and that is the root of her bullying. And while this is true, it's not an excuse. Hiyoko is at best a well-characterized hateable character, and at worst, an annoying one-note asshole.
Hey, how's it going? Pretty good. Now, you might have thought there were two different people talking, but actually, it's me again. Movie magic.
Okay, I've got most of my ranting out of the way now. And while none of these characters are perfect, and I will still complain, just know that I do love all of them from this point on. And you can tell how much I love this character by the fact I have no clue what their name is.
Should I begin with a brief introduction of myself? After all this time?
I will be referring to this character as Fake Byakuya, because that is how I refer to him in my brain. I feel bad putting him at 14 because I do really like this character and think he's interesting. I also think he's quite an underrated character and wanted to sing his praises at least a little bit, but I can't put him any higher with clear conscience because we literally know next to nothing about him. Fake Byakuya caused a very strong reaction when we first saw the cast, because, you know, he looks exactly like the ultimate dickhead Byakuya Togami from the first game, apart from his weight. And I just want to quickly praise the creators for this. I don't think anyone else would have the balls to throw this at you right at the start and just not explain it until much later on. The mere presence of this person throws so many questions at the player, and I love the thought of what the actual Byakuya was thinking as he watched this imposter pretend to be him. Even though Fake Byakuya is putting on an act and pretending to be someone he isn't, we can still see his real personality peeking through. And when I was playing the game, I loved picking up on how this Byakuya differs from the real Byakuya. I found it really fun and interesting to peel back his outer persona and have a look inside. Fake Byakuya is a natural leader, maybe using the Byakuya persona to give him more confidence to lead, and he's a really strong protective nature. As soon as the killing game starts, he takes steps to try and unite the group, and I love the extent he went to try and stop the first killing after getting that threatening note. I also like his interactions with Hajime, when he says that because of his past and possibly the nature of his very existence, he has major trust issues, and has never really opened up to someone honestly. And I do get the sense that as the first chapter progressed, he slowly started acting more like himself and less like Byakuya. I also wanted to mention that I absolutely loved his free time event when he asks you to be his assistant. It pretty much mirrored Byakuya's from the first game, word for word, but whereas in the first game Byakuya used the metaphor like, one bird in your hand is better than two birds in the bush, or something like that, the fake Byakuya used the same core of the metaphor, but used chicken in your hand is better than pork over there, and I thought this was really fun.
Hey, how much money do you have? Like 69 cents. You know what that means.
I don't have enough money for chicken nugget.
Akane is an idiot at her core, but bless her, I find her quite endearing.
I don't like thinking about complicated stuff. If there's someone strong worth fighting, I'll fight. It's just who I am, you know?
Akane is the lowest placed survivor on this list, and I do think that she is significantly weaker than the other four in this game. She doesn't have a whole lot of development, and her character can be rather flat. So, let's talk about her personality. Akane is the ultimate gymnast, but doesn't really care about it and only does it for the money. She tends to be quite optimistic and is very straightforward. She likes to fight, like, a lot. She sees Nekomaru as the strongest among them, so constantly challenges him to fights, and he eventually agrees to train her. She is hot-headed and impulsive, and eats a whole lot. She doesn't really change much during the main story, apart from in Chapter 4 when Nekomaru dies. But to be honest, you can't really notice too much of a change from before and after her development, so it really isn't good enough, especially considering she lasted for the whole game. I talk more about her lack of development and my problems with her in my video on Chapter 4. But you can learn a lot about Kane and why she is the way she is from her free time events. She was very poor growing up and had to act like a parent to her many younger brothers. She says that her talent in gymnastics probably came from her getting into fights and doing parkour while running from people, and you just generally get the feeling that she had a really tough childhood. But Akane doesn't seem to realise that she had a tough childhood. She just accepts that that's the way the world is and gets on with it, which I guess is kind of badass? Maybe? Maybe it's just stupidity? It's kind of hard to grasp Akane in terms of her intelligence, because she's not exactly naive about the world and how stuff is, but she is probably the least useful person in Trials. Like, come on bitch, it's like you're not even trying. You realise we could all die, right? And I found her occasional sexual comments to be really out of place and weird. I'm not sure if they hint at some abuse or something in her past, or if she's just accepted and owns that she's probably got a lot of male attention because she's fucking hot. And I don't hate it as much as Teru's. I just hate that she does it in the Trials. Like, if she suggested that Nagito stabbed himself using his dick at any other time, I'd probably find it funnier. Overall, I honestly can't find too much about Akane that makes her a good character. But I guess she did keep the mood light, and I liked how she always wanted to take action and do shit to try and help. But to me, she's just a slightly lesser version of Hina from the first game. The main thing I remember about her is how, in literally almost every case, I suspected her. I always felt that she would be capable of a murder, and I guess it subverted my expectations that she survived. But yeah, she's just not as strong as the rest of the cast.
You ready to fucking die?
No, yeah, I'm a bad bitch. You can't kill me.
Peko is another one who I do really like, but I can't put her higher up because we have some issues. But come on, her name is Peko Pekoyama. That's so fun.
I will not allow that.
It's fine, just stop it!
Justice must always be there to guide us, to shine bright above our heads.
I'm telling you to stop it!
Peko is the ultimate swordswoman, which is so awesome, and she gives off these really cool vibes. She's serious and cold. Like, you can tell that she's been through some shit, and is now just hardened and dead to the world. She carries a wooden sword on her back, and even though it's wooden, you always feel like if you fucked with her, she can and will destroy you. But while this is cool and all, Peko has a sweet side. She doesn't show it a lot, and if you don't do her free time events, you hardly see any instances of her letting down her walls. Speaking of the free time events, they are adorable. She expresses an interest in wanting to pet cute fluffy animals, but because of her intense gaze and scary aura, they run away from her. This is the most tragic thing. Honestly, someone save this poor girl, she can't pet fluffy things! The rest of her free times focus on her wanting to smile, and in the last one, she asks you for advice on asking someone out. In hindsight, we know this person who she wants to ask out is Fuyuhiko, her childhood friend and the person she protects as his bodyguard. And my god, anything to do with Fuyuhiko and Peko gives me the feels so bad. Because they both love each other, but it was too late. Fuck, I need a minute. Oh right, my problems. So Peko is the killer in the second chapter, so she doesn't get much screen time or development in the main story. And while the end of the second trial was so good and made me bawl my eyes out, and I thought the reveal that Peko and Fuyuhiko knew each other was really well built up to, I'ma be honest, the second trial is fucking stupid. The motive was just too convoluted and specific. The motive was clearly targeted at Fuyuhiko, since the motive revealed the murder of his sister. But like, if he didn't play the game, nothing would have happened. And I really didn't like how the entirety of the first half of the trial is just figuring out what happened in the game. Like, the girl A, B, C bullshit was tedious and boring. And yeah, while it was kinda cool and creative that the murder weapon that was used to kill Fuyuhiko's sister was fish tank gravel in a swimming costume, it was not relevant to anything. I know these bits aren't Peko's fault, but the whole trial is a shit show, and because Peko is the killer, and this is where she gets most of her screen time, I subconsciously link Peko to this case. Also, the fact that she murdered Mahiru, who I liked, and then pretended she was a serial killer to get people to vote, and then claimed Fuyuhiko was the killer because she was a tool and that he should be set free for getting away with it, is all just so stupid. Like, I get that she was trying to sacrifice herself to let Fuyuhiko escape, but her plan was, let's face it, shit. And I expected so much more from the ultimate swordswoman. Also, I'm torn about Peko's character, because I feel like the whole purpose of her character and her death was just to prompt Fuyuhiko's development? I don't know. I'm tempted to forgive this because of how good Fuyuhiko's development is. But finally, Peko's execution. Just Peko's execution. It's fucking heartbreaking that she died thinking that she'd killed the only person she cared about, and I can't. Ibuki is a delight. That's it. That's this section.
Hey, y'all! It's Ibuki Miota! Thanks for coming out today! My specialty is making beef stew!
When I think of Ibuki, the first thing I think of is energy. Ibuki is dripping in energy and charisma, and she literally lights up every scene she's in. She's just really fun-loving and a ray of sunshine. Ibuki is the ultimate musician who used to be a member of a really successful girl group, but left the band and went solo after, creative differences. And I have no clue why that would be. I mean, you do you, bub. Have a great time. I love the names of your songs. But Ibuki doesn't really have much of an influence on the overall story. She's helpful in the first case, when she uses her good hearing to provide an account of all the sounds during the blackout. She was one of the girls in the game in the second chapter, and she performs a concert for Fuyuhiko's return. But she never really affects the main plot. Like, she's fun, but she's just kinda there. And then she dies. Yeah, I think it was a real shame that Ibuki didn't have more influence or even more time to develop during the time she was alive. But I do understand that with so many characters, you would need some that aren't as deep as others, otherwise you just have a clusterfuck and the game would take years to play. Although Ibuki doesn't get much in the main story, her free time events are honestly so much fun. She kinda forces Hajime to make a band with her, and they spend a load of time doing activities that she claims are band practice, but in reality are not related at all and are just an excuse for her and Hajime to have fun. And it is fun! Hajime is kind of being swept up at her pace at the start, but you can tell that he ends up enjoying himself. At the end of Ibuki's free times, she ends up talking to you about when she left her old girl group to pursue a solo career, and she actually became really vulnerable and raw around you, and tells you of how lonely she feels sometimes, which is a really nice extra layer to her character. And just to finish off, look at her design. It's so fucking cool.
My poop is coming!
There is only one way to introduce this next person. And his name is Nekomaru Nidai, and he's got a fucking epic shouty voice.
What was that? You're gonna win? That's quite absurd!
Nekomaru is the resident big strong one of the game, joining the likes of Sakura and Gonta. And one thing these big characters have in common is how damn sweet they are. When you first see Nekomaru, you'll probably get intimidated by his size and voice and design. Like, come on. The guy has a chain to hold his whistle and lightning coming out of his eyes. But then when you get to know him, you start to realise that he's a sweetheart. He's the ultimate team manager and has brought many failing sports teams to success. He has a real team spirit and is so good at hyping his friends up and encouraging them to be the best they can be. He in particular takes Akane under his wing. He trains and spars with her and becomes a very important person in her life. Like Ibuki, Nekomaru is always at 100%. He shouts literally all of his dialogue, which I don't mind because I absolutely love his voice actor, and he's just very extreme. His extreme and selfless natures come together when he protects Akane from a bazooka by taking the blow himself and almost dying. And then, since Monokuma is like, ah, shit, I wasn't quite meant to do that, he ends up turning Nekomaru into a fucking robot to keep him alive in any way he could. This is Nekomaru at his most extreme. Like, what? Only in a series like Danganronpa could you literally just turn one of the characters into a robot who cries Coca-Cola and iced tea and have the player hardly even question it. To be honest, Nekomaru really takes to being a robot. He doesn't seem upset at all that he's permanently lost his physical body and just ends up laughing it off. I was a bit torn about this because on one hand, seeing this beast of a man laugh off becoming a robot was kind of funny to me, but on the other hand, seeing some vulnerability would have done him so much good in my eyes. But maybe he just hid his conflicting emotions because Akane was upset and felt responsible for what happened to him. That actually sounds quite realistic for him. I say realistic like I'm not talking about becoming a human lollipop. Nekomaru is just one of my favourites because of how selfless and brave he is. I really loved his finale and his battle with Gundam because they both knew they couldn't give up on life like the others. But I can't put him higher up because he doesn't really develop much during the game. And like I said with Ibuki, that's not necessarily a bad thing with such a big cast, but I have to take into account when rating characters. Also, he really likes talking about shit. Like, that was funny maybe the first time he said it because I was taken off guard, but when almost every other word out of his mouth is shit, maybe it's time to stop.
He doesn't deserve you. If he doesn't treat you right by now, you're gone. I'm gone. Now go chop his dick off.
Mahiru is one of the most down-to-earth and kind characters in Danganronpa, and it was such a shame she died so early.
Hey, weren't you guys taught any basic manners, or were you raised in a locker room?
I'm sorry.
Mahiru feels like a real person to me. Like, while I love gushing about all the wacky and ridiculous Danganronpa characters, I found Mahiru's realism to be really refreshing. She felt like some of my friends, and early on, I found her reactions to things to be very similar to how I would react to those things myself. Mahiru even has a less ridiculous talent, which is photography. I mean, you could probably guess that from the camera around her neck. She not only loves taking photos, but also feels that it's a photographer's duty to document the events that transpire around them. She was inspired to be a photographer because her mum is a famous war photographer. However, Mahiru doesn't like depressing landscapes, and instead focuses on taking pictures of people's smiles. I can't express how cute this is. She just wants everyone to smile and be happy. She seems to fit into this sort of big sisterly role early in the game, and this makes sense in terms of her free times too, where she tells you that she has to take care of her family, and her father in particular. Also in her free times, she expresses a desire to go abroad and pursue her career like her mother did, but feels that she needs to stay there, since there are people who depend on her. Since she had to step up into a position of responsibility within her family, she also has this slight dislike of men. These times when she would be like, "You are a boy, right?" kind of bugged me on my first playthrough, but after finding out more about her, it seems less "I hate men," and more "these men are all lazy idiots and I need to encourage them to be better." It's still a little unnecessary in my eyes, but I like having characters that think differently from me. A character that I love and agree with everything about them is boring. I do think that it was a shame that Mihira died so early on. She was the game's second victim, getting killed by Peko after getting into an argument with Fuyuhiko over the death of his sister. In the game that they played in the second chapter, it was revealed that Mihiru found out who had killed Fuyuhiko's sister, and not only concealed it, but helped destroy evidence because the killer was her friend, who was trying to protect her from Fuyuhiko's sister. The moral lines in the second chapter are very blurry, which I think is great, and it's clear that everyone involved in both incidents are somewhat to blame. But I was still really bummed out when Mihiru died. She was so active and helpful in the first trial, and I thought it was a shame that she only got to be in that one trial. She was the refreshing breath of no-nonsense and down-to-earthness that the game really benefited from while she was around.
I'm taking a nap!
You wanna take a nap?
I'm taking a nap here!
Okay, take a nap right there then.
Good night!
Now, I imagine this one to be kind of controversial, because I know she's so well loved within the fanbase. But
even if I'm betrayed again, I still want to believe in everyone. No matter how many times I may be betrayed, I still want to believe in everyone.
I don't really like Chiaki. I think she's an unremarkable character for most of the game, and then the other part of the game spends so much time bigging her up and gives her the majority of the emotional notes. And if you already love her as much as the developers clearly do, this is great and probably works great. But if you're on the fence about her, some of the big emotional moments in the game just don't hit as well. Right, let's get on to why I'm so conflicted about this character. For the first few chapters of the game, Chiaki feels like just a normal member of the cast. She's the ultimate gamer and has some quirky behaviours like really liking games and falling asleep when you try to have a conversation with her. Like, sometimes her sleepy shtick is funny and cute, but sometimes, especially when we met her for the first time, it kind of feels rude. Then as the game goes on, she starts becoming closer to Hajime and filling the role taken up by Kyoko in the first game. Like Kyoko, she acts as a sort of possible love interest and is one of the leading forces in the investigations and trials. And right, I loved Kyoko, even going as far to put her first on my list. So why is Chiaki this low if she fills the same role? Well, Kyoko was a detective and very emotionally guarded, so while it was clear that she hated the killings, she was calm and seemingly emotional around the bodies. Chiaki is supposedly just a gamer, and I can't particularly think of any specific moment, but she always just kind of felt insensitive to me. And the trials. Oh my god, the trials. Chiaki always seems to be calm and knows what's going on. Like Nagito, she is often thought a few steps ahead of the group. And also, like Nagito, she withholds information. The difference being, Nagito withholds information and what he's figured out because he's the antagonist. He likes playing with your minds and taunting you. He's a massive dick, and the fact that he withholds information makes you hate him. Chiaki just doesn't say what she's thinking because the developers needed someone to give hints to the player and guide them towards the right answer. But in the context of the story, it just seems really patronising for this slow-talking girl to just be like, "It could be linked to this, don't you think, Hajime? I think you know what I mean. You say it though, because for some reason I'm incapable of speaking for myself and need you to do it for me." It's just frustrating. And it's things like these that break the immersion for me. But I don't hate Chiaki. I've put her above other characters that I like, because in hindsight she makes a lot of sense. In the 5th trial, just before she dies, it gets revealed that she is actually the traitor, that she's an AI created by the Future Foundation to act as one of our classmates and steer us on the right path in our virtual world rehab. And this makes so much sense. It brings all the little things about her together. She seems to not have many actual flaws, but that's because she's not an actual person, and is just an AI created to be perfect and to make others want to be better. She is insensitive around the dead bodies, and doesn't seem to express or understand emotions because she doesn't have them. She's an AI. On replays of the game, Chiaki's character and that plot twist, it seems really well written because Chiaki does honestly feel like an AI. So yeah, Chiaki is quite well written, but because I didn't really connect to her and thought she was insufferable in the trials, the big emotional moments at the end of the game with Hajime being helped by her and saying thank you, all that just didn't work for me. But she's also responsible for one of my favourite executions ever, and this moment after her death, where she just shows up because the game is glitching, was such a massive fucking jump scare for me. It got me bad, and I respect that.
Hey Katie, stop! Hey Katie, I'm sensitive, Aubrey!
Mikan is a twisted bitch, and I love that.
Justifying your actions with fancy words. Making excuses for why it's not really your fault. Everyone always treats me like that. It's all her fault. I'm done with that! You hear me? I'm done!
Right, hold on. I want to clarify right off the bat that I really didn't like how Mikan ended. The whole third chapter was a bit of a shit show, to be honest, and I felt that Mikan deserved more. I liked the fact that she was the killer, but I hated the fact that she killed because she had the despair disease. What the fuck even is a despair disease? That motive fucking sucked. I liked how she remembered her lost memories of Junko, and thought that that was a good build-up for the reveal that we are all the remnants of despair at the end. But I mean, couldn't she just have found something in the hospital like Nagito did in the 4th chapter? The whole despair disease of remembering or some bullshit was really stupid. Also, her execution was really weird in a bad way. Okay, now let's get on to why I think Mikan is great. Mikan is the ultimate nurse and has the cutest fucking design. Look at that shit. Beautiful. Having the ultimate nurse was really useful in investigations because she could do autopsies, and the information she found was always really helpful in solving the mystery. But the main reason I love Mikan is because of the subtle layers in her character and how twisted her mind is. So, it's no big secret that Mikan has been abused in her childhood. She had really low self-esteem, apologises for everything, and accepts Hyoko's bullying. It's even more apparent in her free time events too. She thinks she's always in the wrong, offers to take her clothes off to make it up for it, and says that to avoid being beaten up in the past, she's taken over debt and let people throw darts at her. She even got her talent in nursing from tending to her own injuries. Mikan has suffered so much, and all of the abuse has very clearly affected her mental state. In her final free time event, she tells Hajime that she thinks of abuse as a type of affection, and would rather be abused than be ignored. And this could explain why she puts up with Hyoko for so long. Sometimes she even repeats what Hyoko says, just trying to make the whole event bigger. And possibly even the way she falls all the time is something that she does so people give her attention. I love Mikan's character because of how much you don't know what she's thinking at any given time. Maybe she just is clumsy. But can clumsy even explain the positions she ends up in? I also love the creepiness in how she talks about being a nurse. She likes taking care of ill people because they are weaker than her, because they rely on her. In those moments, she holds power over them and she becomes the centre of their life just for a short while. Even her snap moment at the end I kind of liked. I loved her obsession with Junko. It was clear to me that Junko could have easily given Mikan the attention and power she craved, and I think her voice actor did a really good job all the way through, playing the genuinely meek and nervous Mikan, playing the Mikan possibly just seeking that attention, and then playing the Mikan who just snaps. The low voice with that tinge of confidence was honestly so creepy and so good. It gave me goosebumps. Just a shame her final chapter was such a disappointment in other areas. Kazuichi is often defined purely by his crush/obsession with Sonya, which kinda sucks because everything else about him I think is really good.
That seals it. The killer is whoever was in the office with the circuit breaker. Which means it was you, Peko Pekoyama!
Yeah, I know Kazuichi isn't exactly a fan favourite, but I really like the guy. At first, Kazuichi stood out to me because of his reactions and sprite designs. I decided I liked him pretty early on with this one moment. It's the first morning on the island after we've been told we're being made to kill each other. Hajime leaves his room and bumps into Kazuichi, who screams. Then Monokuma shows up and he panics. This, for some reason, just made me laugh so much, because it just felt so genuine. I mean, the voice acting and facial expression are both hilarious, but it just felt so weirdly accurate. This is a situation where you could be murdered at any moment. You would realistically be more than a little on edge. And when a mechanical, seemingly sentient, creepy bear, who is also the one making you kill each other, shows up, yeah, that seems like a founded reaction. I also really love how passionate Kazuichi is about his talent as the ultimate mechanic. He was brought up in a bike repair shop, so had also built and taken apart things from a young age, and you can tell. He feels at home when he can dismantle things, and is super helpful, especially in the 3rd and 4th chapters, when he makes the communication devices using limited resources, and then repairs both the elevator and door button. He worked super well under pressure and was talented enough to understand the mechanics in a really short amount of time. He becomes a kind of bro character to Hajime as the story goes on, but then in chapter 4 when Nagito accuses Hajime of being the traitor, since he was the only one who didn't know his ultimate talent, Kazuichi really lets this get to his head and begins to act really distrusting of Hajime. But even the fact that he felt that he couldn't trust Hajime, or continue to be friends with him, seemed to cause him a great deal of shame and sadness. But he does get over this by the next chapter, when Hajime tells him that he's from the reserve course. When I first played this, I was slightly confused by Kazuichi's paranoia. To me, it didn't feel like he and Hajime were particularly close, so I didn't understand why he would react so differently to the others. But then I played his free time events. In his final event, he tells Hajime that he was pretty badly betrayed by a close friend in the past, and that's left him very distrustful of others, and hesitant to even try to make friendships. And when I went back to look through the story, it does seem that Kazuichi feels closest to Hajime. Hajime is the one he thinks to invite to crash the girls' beach day with. And, you know, Hajime is a pretty chill guy, who wouldn't want to be his friend. I'm sorry, I just love friendship. Any development where it's someone learning to make friends and learning to open up is liquid gold. But unfortunately, Kazuichi's defining characteristic that the main story focuses on isn't his talent or his friendships or anything interesting about him. His main character trait is that he's completely enamoured with Sonia. And I mean, I get it. He's got his own flaws and insecurities and is a horny teen and comes from a more working class background, so this literal princess, who is also beautiful and has a nice personality, would be a literal dream to him. And this is where his problem begins. He thinks of Sonia as a dream, as this perfect person. But Sonia isn't perfect. Sonia is human, like everybody else, and putting someone on a pedestal, as much as Kazuichi does to Sonia, isn't healthy. He fell in love with this fantasy version of Sonia, and because of this, thinks she can do nothing wrong, and also doesn't understand her clear rejections. His obsession with Sonia becomes old, fast, and then just keeps becoming more and more creepy as he keeps trying to win her affection despite her complete lack of interest. His over-the-top jealousy towards Gundam, who Sonia actually does have an interest in, is also really overdone. His interactions with both Sonia and Gundam in the 4th chapter are really uncomfortable to watch, and I was happy when he dialed down the Sonia obsession for the final stretch of the game.
I'm telling you, Mom, I'm a thug. A rebellious child. My life be like, ooh ah.
Speaking of Sonia, I love her. She's a weird one though. She's pretty, funny, unpredictable, and very Danganronpa.
Heard about it from Monami. I did not want to hear that! Enough already. I do not want this anymore.
Sonia.
And just because she knew the bomb was does not mean we should decide she is the traitor!
Sonia is the ultimate princess, which is a bit odd in itself, since you'd think there can't be that many high school-aged princesses that want to go to school in Japan. So did she just get a title because, you know, she's a princess, and Hope's Peak thought it would be cool to have a princess there, but she didn't have an actual talent, so they just called her the ultimate princess. Nay, Sonia takes her role as a princess very seriously, and even though she's very naive in some ways, she shows a great knowledge of political issues and similar things. When doing her free times, You can see just how devoted she is to her country, and you can tell that she does her job well, despite being so young. She puts her people first, and even goes as far to say that she is a princess before she is a person. This devotion to her people is reciprocated as well, since it seems that they like her a lot. Now, let me talk about Sonia as a person. I said she can be very naive sometimes, and this is true, but it's normally due to her A. getting confused about the differences in culture between hers and Japan, B. not quite understanding the language, which isn't her first language, or C. a few instances of not understanding quite how the world works because as a princess, she's obviously been hugely sheltered her entire life. These things do not make Sonia stupid. Sonia is actually really smart and helps considerably in most trials. In the second trial, she uses her knowledge of serial killers to point out that Peko wasn't the serial killer she claimed to be, and points us towards Peko's real motive, which was crucial. And even if she doesn't have specific knowledge to benefit the group, she still tries in all the trials, which is more than I can say for some others. And she develops into a much more active character by the end of the game. After growing really close to the rest of the group, she feels that she doesn't help enough and wants to do more. Then, after Gundam, a person she respected a lot and possibly had a crush on, died, it spurred her on to escape the island. As soon as the 5th chapter starts, she notices bombs in the army base and immediately thinks to test them out on the door to the ancient ruin. Even though she is disappointed that the bombs aren't real and thinks that she couldn't help after all, she was then able to tell us that they weren't real when we were all afraid we were going to die. Sonia is also really funny in the way in which she subverts expectations. When you first see her and find out she's a princess, you aren't really surprised. She gives off this regal air and just looks perfect. And then you immediately see her early game naivety in full bloom when Teru is trying to get her to suck poison out of his loins. So you're like, aha, this is the naive foreign princess. But then she starts coming out with these impressive ideas about government and proves her intelligence. There's even the weird and evolving mess that is her country. The whole country loves anime and Asian dramas, and children learn how to operate tanks and weaponry from a young age. The stuff she says about her country gets weirder and weirder every time. Oh, and there's also her love of serial killers and horror films, which leads nicely to her cute little relationship with Gundam, who is anything but the stereotypical prince. Also, if you couldn't tell, I ship Gundam and Sonia more than anything and love their interactions so much. And the way she takes care of his hamsters after his death is beautiful and makes me want to sob. The final way I can think of that Sonia subverts the expectations of a young, beautiful, naive princess is through her sexuality. She makes it clear in chapter 4 that she's sexually active, when Gundam says, "Oh, they will need blood of a virgin," and Sonia says that her blood cannot be used. And Sonia is also responsible for this moment with Byakuya that made me cackle.
The footage you recorded with the surveillance cameras was shown to the Future Foundation? What shall I do? I did a lot of disgraceful things in front of those cameras!
You sure did.
Hey, how you doing? Well, I'm doing just fine. I lied, I'm dying inside.
Hajime is a great protagonist and is one very clear example of how the second game is an improvement on the first.
If I recall, an octagon is a shape with 8 sides, right?
I didn't expect you to know that.
When you first see Hajime, you're obviously going to start comparing him to Makoto. They both have very similar introductions, that being their admiration for Hope's Peak, but where Hajime starts getting interesting is how he deviates from Makoto's character. Makoto's admiration of Hope's Peak felt more calm and average. He goes on forums online and even says that he doesn't have that many strong opinions, he normally just agrees with most people. But Hajime's admiration feels that bit more passionate and almost desperate. He looks so damn happy that he's going to Hope's Peak. It's a long-term dream of his finally realised. So obviously, when he ends up on some random island, he's more pissed than everyone else, because he was so obsessed with Hope's Peak and excited to go there. And now he's on some island with a bunny, and no one else seems to give a shit. I love his paranoia in the prologue. It really humanises him, and right from the start gives him a sense of separation between him and the other students. Speaking of the prologue, the start of this game introduces us to one of Hajime's main personality traits, his ultimate sass. Hajime's voice is one that's constantly filled with this unceasing sarcasm and sense that he's just done with the crazy people around him, and I found this really funny. It made Hajime seem like the perfect lens for the player from the normal world to view this absolute ridiculousness that is Danganronpa and its characters. For me, Hajime is the perfect balance of relatability and actual character that main characters can struggle to get right. Even Makoto in the first game, while I liked him, he had very little personality other than a nice guy who is just normal like everyone else. Hajime is both relatable and has his own personality. And I love the sense we get all the way through the game that we don't know everything about this character we're playing as. Right from the start, we are the ultimate question mark that we get in every game. We do not know what Hajime's talent is, we don't know why he is here, we don't know him. And even when we learn that Hajime is from the reserve course, there's still the question of why a normal student from the reserve course would be with a class of ultimate students. This all comes to its peak in the finale of the game, when we get the big reveal of who Hajime actually is. Izuru Kamakura, the ultimate everything, artificially created talent, the person who brutally murdered the student council of Hope's Peak, triggering Junko's rise to power, the person who before this game starts, plugs in the virus of Junko's consciousness into the rehabilitation program the Future Foundation made, the person who represents the hidden horror of Hope's Peak and what they stand for. Hajime, a reserve corps student with a crippling inferiority complex and self-hatred, who loved Hope's Peak with all his heart, volunteered himself to be used as a guinea pig for the school's research on talent, and in the process, destroying what was left of his old self. I loved this reveal. I loved the thought that we were the reason people were dying in this game, and we had no knowledge of it. And I really loved the moment in that final trial where we are confronted with Izuru and have to listen to him speaking all our insecurities at us. I did think it was a shame that the final trial didn't have more about Hajime and Izuru, since it spent so much time info dumping, because I thought the moments when we were dealing with the interior emotions of the characters we love were the highlight of this trial. Overall, I really liked Hajime and his development. I loved the in-depth look we got into his mind all the way through the game. I loved his confidence in the trials. Even when we knew he was insecure, he kept most of that internal, since he knew he just had to get on with the situation, and could potentially get everyone killed if he wallowed in his own self-pity. Hajime felt like the perfect protagonist for this game. He was the epitome of the themes of talent, self-worth, and past actions defining a person, and I really loved that.
This coffee is bitter, like my soul. I need something black, like my soul. Fuck, it's cold, like my soul.
Gundam is insane, and awesome, and honestly, I'm so happy that we have a series like Danganronpa that can give us characters like this.
That's right, you've seen it clearly. Because I, the one who has claimed dominion over evil, am the ultimate weapon. I am he who cuts the insolent catalyst which flows out from the chaos with the sword of victory. It's only fitting that I deserve to be called the ultimate weapon.
I don't really know where to start with Gundam. There's so much to unpack here. So let's start off with the basics. Gundam is a cool coat-wearing, ninja-looking demon boy with a scar over his eye, a cool deep voice, and the vocabulary of a fantasy antagonist. He is also the ultimate breeder who keeps 4 hamsters on his person at all times and teaches them tricks, who then gets into a relationship with a princess, kills a robot, and then gets killed in a stampede, and then is taken to animal heaven by little angels, puppies, and kittens. What is this character? Who the fuck thought of this? Gundam never had any friends all throughout his childhood. He was extremely lonely and isolated, and so turned all his love towards animals. He's super good with all animals, and has an online journal where he posts about how to properly care for them. He was thus named the ultimate breeder. Despite this, the lack of positive human interaction for all his formative years made him reclusive and very eccentric. He seems to experience his whole life through this lens of fantasy and delusion. However, all the crazy claims he makes are just exaggerations of things that happen to him, and you can work out a pretty good image of his life if you manage to decode what he says, which Hajime manages by the end of Gundam's free times. Gundam says he battled with a fearsome hellhound and made it obedient to him and thus gained his beloved hellhound earring. But the hellhound was just an unruly Pomeranian that he trained. He says that he has been poisoned in small doses since he was a child and is therefore himself poisonous. But his mother was just really bad at cooking. He says he is the forbidden child of a demon and an angel and is shunned by all. But it's suggested that his father was largely absent, hence the demon side, and maybe Gundam was born out of an affair or something similar. While his delusions are not healthy, it shows a boy with hardly any social skills and knowledge of the real world, trying to deal with his life in a way that he understands, and I found this really interesting. I also loved Gundam's development in this game. He makes it very clear early on that he never has friends and has no intention of being friends with anyone. He is happy enough to keep living in his fantasy world with his animals as he always has. And in the first chapter, he seems to really not care about any of us, even going as far as to not investigate the first murder scene like the rest of us, and instead spend his time looking for an earring that he dropped. He does end up being helpful in that first trial, but I would definitely say that it was accidental. Then, in the second chapter, we start getting little glimpses that he wants to be included and wants to be friends. He starts overhearing yours and Kazuichi's plans, and then shows up to the meeting spots by accident, and tells you how much he doesn't care about what we're doing. His attitude here seems so childlike and insecure. This is probably the first time he's seen a group of people his age who are also fucking weirdos, and he views as cool. And he puts himself so far out of his comfort zone to try and be near us, and then doesn't know how to make friends, so just lies that he doesn't care and goes away. His arc seems to come full circle by chapter 4, where he seems to have good chemistry with Sonya. They go off on their own a lot, so have clearly become good friends by this point, and the way he blushes whenever Sonya compliments him and his hamsters is so goddamn adorable, it makes you want to throw things. I've spoken about Gundam's motives for killing and how I love both him and Nekomaru for their sacrifice in my other video on that case, so all I'll say here is, I love that the boy, who never had any friends and never felt he needed friends, ended up willingly giving his own life so that his new friends could live, and gave them a wonderfully powerful speech about not giving up on life and the importance of life. It brings a tear to my eye every time.
Oh, I just can't wait to beat your ass. That's right, bitch. I'm coming.
This character is probably my personal favourite of this game. I know he's not first, and that might say otherwise, but I don't think any other character in this game holds a candle to the pure insanity of the number one pick, and you probably already know who it is. But fuck that guy. For now, I'ma just gush about my personal favourite, Fuyuhiko.
Then what about the alarm? I'm positive the alarm was set for 7:30 a.m. And if we
Hold on, baby gangsta!
Stop calling me baby gangsta!
When I think of Fuyuhiko, I think of two words. Character development. I don't think any other character in this game goes through as much of a personal growth journey as Fuyuhiko does. So, let's talk about it. Fuyuhiko starts off the game very antagonistic. He's the ultimate Yakuza, which immediately is like a massive sign above his head saying, piss me off and then die horribly. And he lives up to this by being really standoffish in the introductions, and later, when we get told that we're going to have to kill each other, he says, I can do it. I can kill one of you to escape. This is the world I've lived in since I was born. This situation doesn't scare me at all. He then refuses to show up to the morning meetings and the big party, which shows his utter unwillingness to get along with the group. Then we get to chapter 2, the turning point for Fuyuhiko. For this chapter, Monokuma's motive was specifically targeted at Fuyuhiko, bringing up an unresolved issue from the part of his past that he doesn't remember, the murder of his sister. So, long story short, Peko ends up killing my hero. I've already spoke about both of them, so that's all they're getting here. We need to focus on Fuyuhiko and why this is so important to him. In this chapter, he has not only found out that his sister is dead, and he probably killed her murderer, but also Peko, the only person he trusts, childhood friend and crush, has now killed. And as Peko tells Fuyuhiko her plan, he realises that she has planned for her own death. Peko thinks of herself as Fuyuhiko's tool for him to use as he likes, and this must be so damn crushing for Fuyuhiko. Fuyuhiko loves Peko. He thinks of her as a friend, as his equal, and here she is just deciding that she means nothing to him and planning her own death. So try as he might to sway the vote at the end, Peko ends up being decided the murderer, and this moment is probably when Fuyuhiko stormed up the rankings for me. This cold Yakuza facade falls away to reveal what he really is. A fucking child! Who is being told that the only real person he has any connection with is going to die because she was trying to help him. And oh my god, I'm tearing up just thinking about this. During Peko's execution, he runs in to try and save her, but only ends up getting seriously hurt himself. This marks the start of a new Fuyuhiko. We somberly meet up with him in the hospital, and then BAM! He's got a badass eye patch and is ready to introduce himself properly and apologise for what he did, and holy shit, he sliced open his own fucking stomach. I'm guessing this is a Yakuza thing? He says that he didn't expect them to forgive him with a half-assed apology, so says, "Bitches, you want redemption? Whoop!" Though all of this stuff happens in Chapter 3, the chapter where I think Fuyuhiko really starts cementing himself as a protagonist rather than an antagonist is the 4th chapter. He starts to really feel like a part of the group, able to have natural conversations and banter with the other characters, who he is starting to accept as his friends. He then also tries to reach out to Akane, since he feels that they must be going through the same guilt. Fuyuhiko goes through so much pain and trauma in this game, yet still comes out the other side much stronger than before. But he's also the cutest little bean. Look at his baby face, look at his height. He likes to eat sweets but hates milk. Like, yeah, he's the heir to a massive Yakuza clan, but he's still just a kid. Also, in his free times, when he says he wants to leave the island so he can visit his sister's grave and hold a funeral for Peko, I was like breaking down. Why is this boy so goddamn tragic? But hey, he's also badass. I love his eye patch, and he has a fair share of really good lines, perfectly voiced by his voice actor. Alright, you all saw this coming. Let's get to my first pick.
Oh hi, thanks for checking in. I'm still a piece of garbage.
It's Nagito. There's literally no one else it could be. It's Nagito.
It's amazing! These amazing fireworks surely befit the beginning of the end!
So, if you've seen literally any of my video essays on Danganronpa 2, you will have seen this coming a mile away. Nagito is like no other character in anything. He's such a specific brand of crazy that could only fit into this crazy world of Danganronpa. Nagito is just the star of this game. I'm sorry Monokuma, I'm sorry Hajime, but this guy just came out of nowhere, took all the awards, possibly burnt them somewhere, and then got hit by a train. I don't even know what I'm saying at this point. I've written so many thousands of words on him in my videos, and yet I still have more to say. I feel like because Nagito has become such a meme in the Danganronpa fandom, people have forgotten what a creepy and sinister antagonist he was. Like honestly, every time Nagito enters a scene, you're always on the edge of your seat, and that's how an antagonist should be. You never know what Nagito is going to do next. He's unpredictable, and yet always stays perfectly in character. You'll learn to absolutely hate his nasally sarcastic voice. And you should. Nagito's voice work alone makes you feel uneasy, makes you think he's lying to you, taunting you. And it's so weird to me how he's such a good antagonist, and yet for the majority of the game he loves the main characters, and looks up to them with such passion and admiration. It's almost inconceivable to think that someone who loves good so much could be bad. But his childhood's gone fucked him up, so Nagito is so set in his ways and invested in his beliefs that it's scary. It's almost like how people get with religion. They become completely invested in this one thing, that becomes twisted, and then they think everything else is meaningless, irrelevant. I think Nagito's character could be viewed as a good deconstruction of why blind faith in these twisted beliefs can be really sinister. Nagito's murder case and subsequent trial is one of the most fucked up yet amazing sequences in all of Danganronpa, being many people's all-time favourite, and you can see why. The whole thing is art, weaving in and out of Nagito's character like clockwork. If you want to hear me rant about that, you can go watch my video on it. Pretty much the entire thing is about Nagito, hence me only making really general statements here. Nagito, for me, is the epitome of what Danganronpa can accomplish with its world and super talented creators. Nagito is this carefully constructed monster with a deadly cocktail of good intentions, blind luck, self-hatred and malice. He is an ever-changing being, and though he is so insane and unbelievable, he feels fully realised and, well, real. I don't for a moment think there's anything about this character that the creators wouldn't know. Nagito is Danganronpa. He's got the memes, he's got the fourth wall breaks, he's got links to the wider universe, he's got way too much of a sense of humour to be hateable. He's such a creative character, and I can't think of anyone else who has the right to top my little list. So, that's me done. If you made it this far, thanks. This is such a long video, and god, my throat hurts after reading all of that out. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments. Do you agree with my rankings? Do you think my opinions are trash? Do you think I missed anything out? Honestly, I could talk about these characters until the end of time, so give me anything you got. And again, if you enjoyed this, check out my other videos. I'm currently replaying V3, so expect some video essays on that game at some point. Thanks so much for watching. Goodbye.